Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Tea Time with Tony Westwood and myself, Neville Gaunt. But today it's a Masters special because, as any golfer knows, this is probably one of the best tournaments in the world, not just to watch, but to be at. Unfortunately, this year we can't be there. So we're all being zoomed in or taken in with all of the TV cameras. And frankly, it's been absolutely fascinating. 3 days so far. We're into the final day. Rain delayed, rain impacted, players turning up, players not turning up, despite the fact all the players were there. So, over to you, Tony. What have you observed over the last 3 days?
Well, I mean, as you quite rightly said, Neville, it's absolutely fantastic to be back at Augusta. And I'd say they rank pretty closely, the British Open and the Masters. I think they're the two majors that everybody wants to watch. Obviously, I grew up, way back in the 70s, and I always remember that Augusta was this blast of colour in April into a grey, wintry England as we were just coming out into spring. And it was absolutely phenomenal. And it's fantastic to be there now and understanding and just watching what happens. And I think as I've got more involved with MindFit, as we said, we you and I've worked together now for kind of 7 years or so. I watch sport in a different way now. I've always loved watching sport for the excitement, for the adrenaline. But I think what's so important now is you watch sport based on the performance. We've talked a lot over the first 3 episodes about performance and being in the right frame of mind, having the right mindset, the right attitude, the right behavior. And what's interesting is you still listen to all of the commentators talking about, I really don't know why he hits a bad shot because he's got such a great swing. And we know that so much emphasis is placed upon making sure that you're making a good swing. Well, if we watched every single swing of every single player and we took the golf ball away, every swing would look like a great swing. What would look different is maybe how they're reacting after they've hit the shot, how they're connected to what's going on. Now, I remember one great learning experience for me years ago was I'd just turned pro. It's 1985, and I was playing, and I know that my boss was playing some several holes behind me. And I hit this shot, not a very good shot, on the ninth hole at Cleveland Golf Club in Redcar. Reacted, didn't think anything of it, and carried on playing. Afterwards, in the pro shop, my boss said to me, he says, "Hey, Westy," he says, "what kind of shot did you hit down the ninth earlier?" I said, "Oh, I just didn't quite catch it." He said, "It went a bit low and it wasn't my best shot." He says, "I know." I said, "How did you know?" He says, "Well, I could see from your reaction. I was 5 holes behind you." He says, "One thing you should always remember," he says, "if I'm watching you, I don't want to know that it's a bad shot by looking at your reaction." And I've followed that through, and I know it might not be my best shot internally, but nobody else is going to know because from a distance, I'm just going to put the same swing. I'm just going to do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's key, really. I was having this discussion with Holly, our daughter, yesterday, and she said, "So what do you do when you hit a good shot or a bad shot?" I says, "I don't have good shots and bad shots. I just have golf shots because every golf shot is just a golf shot. Some are more closer to what you wanted and some aren't close to what you wanted. But you can reframe and reboot and move forwards every single time. And the player who's done that the best so far this week is Dustin Johnson. Full stop. He's
And
been
and
absolutely,
and where is
absolutely
he? He's like 4 shots ahead of the pack. So it sort of brings out the results as well, doesn't it? It's that emotional intelligence, as people call it, of
mm,
just being able to take your best shot at the right time and calculate what went on and move on. It's
well,
not
I
difficult, is
mean,
it?
Sports psychologists talk about creating your bubble, don't they?
Yeah.
And in your bubble is warm and bright. And inside your bubble, you have all the words that you need to help you perform. Your commitment, trust, belief, focus, confidence, all of those elements. If you can get into your bubble and stay in your bubble, and every single shot you're going to play, you show up as the best version of you possibly can. Every single shot. Now that sounds really quite simple. You know what? It isn't that simple, because things happen. And when things happen, you need to be able to deal with them very, very quickly and then get back in your bubble. So you show up to the next shot as being the best version of you that you possibly can over that next shot. And then guess what you do after that? You show up at your next shot being the best version of you that you possibly can. And it doesn't matter where we are or whatever we're doing. We're talking about the world stage for golfers at the moment, but it doesn't matter where you are. Any business interaction you're going to have, any phone call you're going to take, you need to be there as the best version that you possibly can, because you can then react in the best way you possibly can based on that current situation once you're reflecting on the evidence that's put in front of you with how that interaction or communication is going. It just so happens that the golfer's communication is with the golf ball, with the golf course, with the weather, with things that happen around them. What's been really interesting is the golfers are playing without the buffer of having a gallery either side of the fairway. So they're struggling to find golf balls. Bryson lost a golf ball on the third hole at Augusta the other day, and I can't imagine that anybody has ever lost a golf ball on the third hole at Augusta. Because he lost it on the left-hand side where the crowd would normally be standing. It's a runoff area where it's been soft, where the rain has run off from the first round, as you quite rightly said, on Thursday, and his ball's plugged, and because there's no gallery there, there's nobody to help him find it. So they're playing golf closer to what the average golfer does than they've ever done before.
Exactly.
And some of them are dealing with it really, really well, and others aren't.
Yeah, we talk about just slipping into the leadership in the business mode now. We talk about leadership being contextual. And the beautiful thing about a golfer is that every shot has a context. Not the last shot, not the next shot, but it's this shot. And in the sports world, they always talk about being in the zone. I know it's sort of creeping into business language these days, but being in that zone. And we see players in that zone, and we also see players that can explain being in the zone when they're interviewed at the end. Now, we saw, you and I probably saw exactly the same interviews at the closing play of yesterday. Although it was quite late in the day when he finished, but for the rain reasons. But the difference in the way players say things when they're being interviewed. Now, remember, now you're on the stage. You're physically being interviewed by a very qualified golfing interviewer. You know, not just the usual BBC hack. You know, this person knows and plays golf through and through, probably plays at a fairly senior level as well. And just let's contrast the stories, and they are stories that McIlroy said when he finished his round, as opposed to Justin. What was the differences?
The difference was incredible, really. There's a lot of hype. There's always a lot of hype going into a major tournament in terms of who's the favourite. You know, DeChambeau was hitting the ball miles, and he was very vocal in coming out and saying, "Well, this is a par 67 for me." Well, actually, if it's a par 67 for him, I can't remember what the numbers I worked out this morning. He's currently shot 270s. So for whatever it is, he's way over par for what his par 67 is. and he's not dealing with things in the right way. But going back to Rory, it's really interesting. He started his press conference by saying that going into the tournament, he was playing as well as he's played in a long time. He felt confident. Since the lockdown, he's had time to practice and reflect. He's been very vocal in the press about saying he wants to cut out the mistakes that he makes. In the next sentence, going into the first round, he says, I was tentative and careful, which this golf course can get you to do. Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, a golf course doesn't really do anything.
But doesn't it talk to you? I mean, I thought most golf course. He sat down on that first tee and he put his ear to the tee box and he said, "Yeah, oh right, I've got to play tentative and careful today." Didn't he?
It's amazing. You know, I've been watching Augusta for years, and I've been playing golf a lot longer than Rory has. And then a golf course has never uttered a word to me. You know, it's
shock
just
horror.
It's just a golf course. But you can imagine the kind of conversation, the self-talk that's going on in that space between his ears. Interesting, they're at the home of Bobby Jones. Bobby Jones created the golf course way back in the 1920s and 1930s. And he's famous for saying that the game of golf is played on a very, very important golf course that lives in the 5.5 inches between your ears. You know, and that is key. And that's where the game is played. Now, after he's completed his first round, he shot 75. He was all over the place. When he restarted, he hit his first tee shot on the 16th hole with the water on the left. And every golfer knows that if they think about going in the water, the next noise they hear is splash. But his actual target area for that tee shot is some 15 to 20 feet right of the hole, so the slope brings it back down to the hole. We talked about one of the drills we do is getting golfers to hit the ball on the right-hand side and make it go left, on the left-hand side and make it go right. Now, Rory is world number 3. He's been world number 1 a couple of times. Surely he should be able to make a golf swing if he's in the right state of mind that's going to hit more on slightly on the left-hand side of the ball to go into the target area onto the green, so it's going to roll down towards the flag. Why at that moment in time does he make a swing that hits 2 or 3 millimeters further to the right-hand side of the ball and the ball goes splash straight in the water? I don't know. He did it at the Open at Portrush, where he hit the first tee shot out of bounds. He's got the rest, not quite the rest of Ireland to the right, but he had a lot of golf course to the right. And why make a swing that hits the right-hand side of the ball and goes out of bounds? I don't know. And these guys play to such fine margins. But they're playing to such fine margins, especially on that space between their ears. And we can see that from the reactions after they've hit the shot on what's actually going on, because it's very evident there's turmoil going on between the conscious and the unconscious minds in that space between their ears. Now, the player who's dealing with it the best just happens to be sitting right at the top of the leaderboard. He's just rebooting every single shot. He's showing up, he's doing the best he can do every single shot. In his press conference, he's talking about, well, I know that I'm playing well. I know what I need to do. I'm hitting every shot as well as I can. And when I need to be aggressive, I can be aggressive. And the rest of the time, I'm just placing the ball where I think I need to place it to give me the best opportunity on the next shot. I can only think about that next shot once I've hit the shot I'm actually playing now. I can't get ahead of myself. And he's not letting the past affect him. And we know the past can affect many, many people because they're carrying baggage around.
Which is more than the clubs. But, you know, there's a very famous book, as we both know, called The Inner Game of Golf. And it wasn't written this century. It was written last century. And until you read it, you don't really appreciate that the 5, I call it 5 inches because I'm slimmer than you are, but not the 5.5. But it is those few inches between the ears, and you talk about fine margins, and these really are fine margins, and the same fine margins exist in business. So if you're turning up for every shot, being contextual about that particular shot, then you're definitely focused on where you're going. Danny Willett, didn't Danny Willett say something very similar when he was interviewed after? Now, Danny Willett came from nowhere to win the Masters in many respects. He was well respected on the sort of European tour, and he did okay, in the UK, and he was sort of well renowned in the UK, but he wasn't really on the world stage at that time. And he won the Masters, and his comment was, I just played every shot to my best ability.
Mm. An interesting thing, he had lots of other stuff going on in his life at that time. His wife was at home expecting their first child. He knew he wasn't going to be there for the birth, but his wife had told him, look, you've qualified for the Masters. You've got to go and play the Masters. We'll be okay. So his firstborn had been born, and he was playing the final round of the Masters, and he was just doing what he needed to do on every single shot. He said he put it into perspective. There was an interview briefly on with him yesterday before the coverage started, and he said, I could hear the cheers going on. Lee Westwood was also getting close at that point, and he knew that he was going well. And he knew he was going well because in that back nine, the amphitheatre, which is the back nine at Augusta, once you hear a cheer, you know something is happening. And he could hear these cheers ringing off here, there, and everywhere. But he can only control what he's doing. He can't control what somebody else is doing. The golf course is the canvas that is there. It's set for them, and they all have to play that same golf course every single day over the course of this event. It isn't going to change unless you allow it to change you. So you control the things that you can control, which is, how do you reboot? How do you frame what happens? Can you maintain your composure? Can you maintain that can-do mindset? Because we're dead right. Henry Ford was dead right. If you think you can do something, you will. And if you think you can't do something, you know what? You're going to be dead right too. And I know you use that an awful lot with a lot of the posts that you put out there. Well, let's be right. Let's understand what's happening, but let's believe we can do it. And if we do fall short, then maybe it's going to give us some ideas on what we need to do, so the next time we get closer to achieving what we actually want to achieve. And that's what we want to be doing, really. That's what's important, because everybody's got potential. Everybody who turned up at that tournament and pegged it up on Thursday morning has the opportunity to win that event, because that's why they're there. It's a hand-picked event.
Yeah.
You qualify it because you are one of the best in the world, period.
And I think coming back to the crowd thing, as that you talked about, you can hear what's going on the rest of the course by the interaction from the crowd, and I think that's what we're all missing. Actually, I mean, that's what I'm missing with Augusta and any golf tournament. I'm missing the crowd, because the oohs and ahs, you're focused on this tee, and you hear something coming in from some other direction. You think, oh, take us to that, because that's really interesting, and it pulls you in. But I think we've seen a couple of things. I saw a shot the other day where Lee Westwood was walking over the bridge, and he was very aware that a ball had literally been, hooked and flew, and he held his caddy back because he could see the ball coming from his right-hand side, and he just held his caddy back, and the ball just sort of skimmed away, splash. And then he took out a tee, and he just put it in. So he said, well, that's where it went in, Tough luck, mate, but that's where it went in. You can find your ball here. And that was one thing. That's about awareness of what's going on around you, despite the fact you're in your zone. So that's one thing. And the other thing yesterday, and I felt so sorry for Jon Rahm because he's such a great golfer, such a jovial character on the course as well. And he hit a pretty particularly bad shot that went into the trees. Now, ordinarily, there would have been a huge crowd around all of those azaleas that you can't, they're not in blossom. There would have been a huge crowd there. And he decided to take a shot in between two trees. Now, frankly, if I'd have taken that shot, I'd have thought it was risky, despite the fact there was about 20 feet in between the trees. And he hit a shot, and he didn't catch the edge of the bark, as the commentator said. It caught bang right in the middle of the tree. So that was a pretty poor shot. And he just sort of you could see the cameraman just didn't change the view. He had the camera set up perfectly, and the shot, it wasn't going that fast, so you could see how far it went. It just hit the tree and ricocheted off 90 degrees straight into the azaleas. And I could hear someone in the background saying, if the crowd were there, it hit the crowd. And he wouldn't have had a drop shot.
Yeah.
But if you look at his demeanor, as he's walking backwards and forwards, he's thinking, how on earth did that happen? He's still, you could see him still going through the motions. How did that happen? How did that happen? He knows where the ball is. It's unplayable. But this is about, again, back to being in the zone, taking the shot that you know is going to be best for you. Perhaps it's a risk. On that particular occasion, he took a risk, and it was a risk that he wouldn't take next time. Or would he? He may well take that same shot next time. But I think what we're seeing here over the last 3 days, and who knows what's going to happen today, all we do know is the sun's out, the greens are fast, the fairways haven't quite dried out, so the runoff isn't as much, so maybe DeChambeau is going to get his 67, who knows, or maybe he's going to turn up with a 60. But the point is, we really do hope, just like you that are listening, play the shot that's in front of you. And it's as simple as that.
I think just to go briefly back onto the Jon Rahm situation, if any golfers want to know how they should deal with that, a word that come into my vocabulary a lot when I play golf is, that was interesting. I didn't mean to do that. What happened? All right, well, I was aiming to go through the middle of the gap in the trees, and I've hit the right-hand tree, so I must have hit the ball a little bit on the left. All right, is that all? Yeah, that's what happened. And then what happened? Then it kicked left and gone into the trees. Right, okay, then. What do we need to do now, then? Full stop.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, because there's no point in overanalyzing something that's historical. And now... because golf is what it is, it's gone. It's past. It's going to affect what you're going to do now, but now be focused on what you're going to do now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting is we want to be focused on exactly what happened, the facts, not how it made us feel. Because the feeling element is individual. Somebody else in that situation might laugh. Somebody might cry, but we're all going to sit somewhere along that. Well, your ability to deal with what happened is going to determine what's going to happen next. And he did recover, and he got himself into a position. Whether he's going to be reliant, much like Faldo was years ago when he was playing with Greg Norman in the final round, when he was 6 shots back, and he managed to get under Norman's skin, or as the commentators said, I think Greg Norman, who'd never won the Masters at that point, did a pretty good job of playing his round of golf in the space between his ears and thinking, well, I've won the Masters, all I need to do tomorrow is to turn up and play. And all of a sudden he shoots 74 and Faldo wins the Masters.
Yeah.
So it's very much controlling the things that you can control. dealing with what happens from a factual point of view. Jon Rahm hit his ball a little bit on the left and he hit the tree on the right. Did he mean to do that? No, but that's what happened. Now what do I need to do next? And that's it. And do it simply and move forwards.
And that's what golf's all about. And we hope you all enjoy the Masters today. Predictions, Tony. Come on. A little friendly bet here. Predictions. I predict before you start. I predict the one that can control. They're all great golfers. I mean, we can't say there is a bad golfer. They're all great golfers. They all deserve to be there. But the one that's going to win is the one that controls what's going on in here.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of the members will ask me in the run up to major tournaments, who do you think is going to win the tournament? I say, well, generally the bloke who has, or the lady who has the lowest score after all 4 rounds. That's who wins the tournament. It's now wide open, in terms of the field, because they are all so good. They have the ability. They all hit the ball a long way. They're all accurate. The majority of them are good putters, and they're playing on fantastic surfaces. So it's that person who makes the right decision. It's interesting. One of the last clips I saw watching the highlights this morning was Jon Rahm missing his par putt on the 18th green. And he did react after he missed the par putt. But he reacted because he knew his emotions had taken over and he hit it too hard, trying to hit it into the hole, instead of just rolling the ball so it just falls into the hole. And one thing I'd let everybody to pay attention to this, of the course of what's going to happen from this afternoon onwards, is just watch the pace at which Dustin Johnson's putts are going into the hole. And they're all going in at exactly the same pace all the time. And that happens when you're in that space where you can operate, where you're managing your heart rate, your breathing, you're in control of what's going on. You're in your bubble, and the only thing you're allowing to get into the bubble are the things that are in your bubble. And that's so important. It's highly likely that Dustin's going to win. They talk about somebody mounting a charge from behind. So the guys behind, Abraham Answer looks great. Cameron Smith looks great.
Yeah.
They're both playing really, really well, but they're 4 shots back, so they get to play the holes ahead of Dustin Johnson, but he has the armory. If they make a birdie on a par 5, there's every chance he's going to make a birdie on the same par 5. So it's going to be a little bit of cat and mouse going on.
Here. Yeah.
It would be interesting to see what happens. But we all know, as Peter Allis quite rightly says, we all know that it starts once you get round the back 9 at Augusta, because holes 10, 11 and 12 can jump up and bite you. The year Danny Willett won, Justin Spieth made 7 on 12 because he went in the water twice. So we know things can happen and things can change dramatically. One of Rory's major collapses was he hadn't made any ground after the front 9. So he was level par after 9 holes, but he thought he was doing badly when everybody else had come back up to him, but he was still level par after 9 holes, but felt he'd failed because he hadn't made ground and gone ahead of the field. That then changed his approach and his mindset, and the rest is history, and he didn't win a green jacket. So it's you're dead right. It's who controls that space between your ears. At the moment, it looks pretty much nailed on for Dustin Johnson. It would be interesting to know how he slept last night, or how he's still sleeping, let's say, because it's still nighttime over there.
True.
So how does he deal with that in terms of making sure he's well rested for today? But it's going to be fantastic, whatever. Yes, it'll be a shame the crowd isn't there, but in that respect, I think it's given the golfers, the golfers who do watch at home, a different perspective on the golf course to see where the ball will run off from. So yeah, it's superb. And some of the aerial views without crowds being there, with these the drone views over the golf course, they're absolutely phenomenal.
Ah, they are phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Well, so whatever it is, we're in for one hell of a last day. As you say, it's going to be cat and mouse, and that's the beauty about golf tournaments. The leader goes last, so the leader knows exactly,
What they've got to do.
what they've got to do.
Yeah.
So my money would be on Justin. But before we go, I think we need a little shout out for the oldest man on the course, Bernard Langer. What a legend. And that's about it. I'm not going to say much more than that. He's just absolutely amazing. Look at his demeanor. Look at the way he enjoys himself around the golf course. That's what we should all be doing. And he's older than me.
It's interesting. They talked the same about Larry Mize, didn't they?
Yeah.
Larry Mize and Bryson DeChambeau scored the same score in the first round. Yet Larry Mize's carry distance was about 200, driving distance was about 260, and Bryson's was about 340. And it just goes to show there are lots of different ways to play around the golf.
Play around the golf. And the same is in business. We hope you enjoy the last day of the Masters today. We'll be back as usual with It's Tea Time on Tuesday at tea time. In the meantime, it's goodbye from him, and it's goodbye from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.